Alright, this is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. Here traveling once again here in Houston, and I'm revisiting actually one of the very locations of a video I made probably about a year ago. I'll put a link down below this video for that specific video. You know, in that video I gave a really excellent tour of the property behind me over on this side. And you know, I'm not gonna go ahead and redo the tour again, but what I am gonna show you guys in this episode is kind of some new updates. You know, since I've been here a year ago, there's some cool new things happening, and also I want to definitely sit down and speak with one of the owners here about the garden and about some of his practices on specifically, you know, how does he grow a garden here in Houston without spraying anything. He hasn't sprayed anything for years and years and years, but you know, he's got to have bugs. I mean, he has ways to deal with pests without spraying, and yes, without spraying even organic pesticides. He doesn't spray anything, which I find amazing, but he has some method to the madness for sure. You know, the one thing I want to say is that, you know, this is a standard residential lot. As you guys can see, we're in a housing development tract home neighborhood. Over on this side we just got a house with a front lawn, and you know, I think that's an incredible waste of space. If you do currently have a lawn, I would highly encourage you guys, especially if it's legal in your area or you don't have any HOA restrictions, to do something like they've done over here to grow their own food. This couple basically has been living on the property for many years. This has taken many years to develop, so this did not happen overnight. And if you do it, it's not going to happen overnight either, but start slowly, you know, planting edible crops and slowly expand the area until your whole property is growing food like they are here. Now, they grow 90 to 95% of their produce that they consume year-round. Now, they do eat more things than just the produce, but if you ate produce, then you could probably subsist on 0.28 of an acre for a couple and grow your own food. Of course, there are other foods that they could be growing on the property, but we're gonna strictly, you know, talk about the specific produce, fruits and the vegetables. They have over about 140 different varieties of fruits growing, as well as a huge vegetable garden. And so I guess without further ado, I'm going to go over there and share with you guys some of the updates and new stuff that I've seen today, and I want to maybe some of the old things that's really cool that I want you guys to be aware of, because I have a lot of new viewers that haven't seen the original episode. But also be sure, once again, check that link down below this video for the original episode, which, you know, I don't think I could outdo myself and make a better tour video than that. So anyways, let's head over and check out some of the new stuff here at Dr. Bob Randall's garden. Alright, so now we're about to enter the property here, and as you guys can see, like, just this whole property, instead of just having a lawn with nothing, I mean, he's maximizing the use of the space here. He's growing a lot of fruit trees and vegetables and other useful and edible crops as well in the space that he has. And you know, he's done everything methodically, and this is what's called permaculture. You know, he has many uses for different plants. You know, some of them provide food, but they also may provide forage for local wildlife. You know, some of them, like the cactus, may keep people away. I mean, there's so many different functions and stacking functions, and that's something that's really important about permaculture that I want you guys to be aware of. So, you know, once again, check that link below for the previous video I did about this. I'm not going to get too much into that. I'm just going to cover some of the cool things I saw this trip to the permaculture home here in the city. So now we're going to go ahead and walk on to the property today. And as you guys can see, there's like a huge grapefruit tree, man. It is loaded up with grapefruits. And you might be thinking, John, how do they harvest the grapefruits, man, if they're super high up there, you know? Well, check it out. You know, the grapefruit tree will drop the fruits when they're completely ripe. I want to always encourage you guys to eat your fruits when optimally ripe, and in many cases, but not all, that's when the fruit tree gives it up, will drop the fruit. So literally all they do is come out every day and look under the grapefruit tree, and they have enough grapefruits to eat, you know. And that's one of the cool things, you know, about all the different fruit trees he has. He doesn't just have, like, you know, 100 varieties of grapefruits. He has a couple grapefruits, some heirloom grapefruits, some heirloom pomelos, some heirloom oranges, all kinds of cool heirloom stuff. And all these different trees, you know, he's basically lined them up so that they produce at different times of the year. So he always has, you know, fruit to eat from his garden, as well as he always has a vegetable garden growing, and he has plenty of vegetables to eat as well. In any case, let's go ahead and show you guys inside some of the new cool things that I saw this trip, and oh, some of the old ones too. So what we're looking at now is next to the house. Once again, he's using all available space to plant some trees and other edible and useful crops. And you know, some of you guys that might have acreage and property might be thinking, John, man, those fruit trees way too close. I mean, some of his fruit trees, I don't know, like 6 feet, 10 feet apart, some even closer. And some people might freak out, man, those trees or the vegetables, they're planted too close, man. That's not what they recommend. Well, you know what? When you don't have a lot of space, you got to do what you can so that you can be the most productive. And I don't necessarily always recommend following the book and doing it by the book, because there may be better and more efficient ways to do things than by the book. Plus also, you need to remember, you know, you need to tailor each garden and each planting, each permaculture site, you know, for the specific use. I mean, if you're farming, that's one use. You're probably gonna plant things wider apart so you can get trucks down in and out the aisles. But if you're just growing for your home, you know, as long as the trees can have enough space to grow out and, you know, get enough contact with the sun, not get shaded too much, you know, they will be productive. And you know, you might not need to maximize every single possible production, because you'd be happy with just getting, you know, 100, 200 oranges or tangerines off your tree here, because after that you're probably full of those and you'd like to move on to one of the different fruits that's you know, going to be producing next. So over here he has different things like guavas, and even has a lychee tree that's grown significantly since I've last been here, and that's really cool. He has plenty of papayas, but this time of year what's mainly in season is some of the citrus. So maybe I'll show you guys some of the cool citrus plants next. All right, he has so many different varieties of citrus, and he's gone over, you know, a good half dozen of them with me today, but I can't remember all the different varieties. But I'll tell you, you know, we walked around and I sampled a bunch of the different citrus, and I'll have to say that this is definitely one of my favorite ones. This is actually some kind of mandarin quat. So it's a kumquat and a mandarin, and we're gonna ask Bob when I interview him at the end the specific variety. But this guy produces like a lot of the mandarin quats or the kumquats, and they actually are quite tasty here. Here's one, we could pick these guys off, and unlike standard oranges and tangerines and all that stuff, you know, you gotta peel the skin because you're not supposed to eat it because it tastes bad. The skin on these guys are actually the best part. And look, these guys are huge for kumquats. The skin to me tastes almost like candy. I mean, it's not really like super sweet like some of them I've tasted, but it has a really good flavor. And then you get some of the skin and some of the pith on the inside. Tastes better than those hard candies that I've had as a kid. Yeah, this is definitely one of the ones that I recommend you guys grow if you live here in Houston. So now what we're looking at is another area of the garden. This is basically the raised bed garden area, which he's using some concrete blocks as the sides to the garden. Actually, it kind of inspired me to use similar blocks to construct my raised bed garden, because concrete, I mean, it's gonna last a long time. Plus I didn't mortar mine in like he didn't here, and you could move them, change configurations, move it around, or take them with you if you decide to move. And basically what he has here is just a whole bed here of the brassica family plants, you know, cauliflower, broccoli, kale, cabbage, bok choy, all that kind of stuff. And you know, the garden here every 3 months pretty much changes. You know, with every different season he's planting and replanting different things, he's harvesting different things. Unfortunately, you know, last time I visited was in the winter, and right now it is also in the winter, although you wouldn't know by the weather, aside from that it's raining a little bit, because it's quite nice today. But yeah, so I'm basically seeing what I saw last time, And I want to always let you guys know that you're going to want to rotate your gardens, you know, personally, wherever you live. So there's always something you guys could be doing in the garden, and you always want to try to have your space productive. I mean, for example, they planted the brassicas here. This bed is pretty much completely planted out. They harvested some the other day. But the bed behind, if you look, it's just all like dirt and turned up. That's because they just harvested their sweet potatoes, you know, and now they have about 4 big, you know, grocery sack bags full of sweet potatoes now that's going to basically last them through the winter to get them in to next year. And then soon enough they'll be replanting that area. So they always have different areas in transition. They're going to be putting some onions in pretty soon. They already got garlic in, and they got parsnips and a bunch of other stuff. And actually they even still have tomatoes growing here, which is cool, and as well as the peppers. So next, what I want to show you guys actually is the peppers. Bob made an amazing discovery this year that, you know, he's never really had luck with Anaheim peppers, but he found one variety of pepper that does well, better than the other varieties he's tried. And let's go ahead and show you guys how loaded this plant is here in December, and you know, what variety specifically it is. So if you live in the Houston or surrounding area, you could grow this one as well, and it'll probably going to do good for you too. So I don't know if you guys could see that, but right here, check it out, man. We got all these peppers on here. This thing is like loaded up. There's all these peppers here. There's some here. They're down over here. I mean, there's like just tons of these guys on there. And these guys are known as the hatch peppers. Hatch peppers are from New Mexico. And basically what he did was he bought some hatch peppers at the store that were as ripe as possible, took out the seeds and just planted them in little 6-packs or started them out, and then transplanted them into his garden as an experiment to see how they'd grow here in Houston. You know, every different variety of plant, whatever you're growing, may do better or worse than other ones. I mean, that's definitely guaranteed. And your job as a good gardener, see, regular gardeners aren't going to do this, but good gardeners are going to do this. You guys are always going to experiment. You're going to get 50 varieties of peppers and try to grow the different ones to see which ones grow the best. And after trying many, you know, he definitely agrees that the hatch pepper, one of the best peppers that he's grown, most productive, and now he has a year's supply of hatch peppers in the freezer and still lots of them ripening up on the plant. So I'm gonna be taking away a bag full today and have some seeds to grow myself in Las Vegas. All right, so this part of the video is kind of fun for me, kind of not, because he's definitely outgrowing me here in Houston. You know, I saw this, I'm like, wow, man, he cut down some trees or something right here. He's just kind of letting them, you know, compost down or whatnot. And then I noticed, like, man, this isn't a tree. Look at that. You guys see what's on there? That's the okra, man. Yeah, right there. It's the okra. And look at this. I mean, this thing is like a little tree here. This is just one season's of growth of the okra. I mean, okra grows particularly well here. Once again, if you live in the Houston area, you know, Central Texas, you're gonna definitely want to grow the okra. I mean, this thing is not a plant, it's a tree. I thought mine were pretty good, being like 8-9 feet tall, but this thing is like tall and stout and growing quite well. But yeah, this basically just got harvested. He's cutting these down, he's composting them, and he's gonna be replanting real soon. Over on this side, he's got it already replanted. He's got the onions planted, he's got different parsleys and fennel seeds planted, and then also he's got a lot of carrots there, you know, growing on. Now, he is growing heirloom carrots, and I want to encourage you guys, if you do choose to grow the carrots, grow heirloom carrots, because they're a lot, you know, more unique and different than the standard orange carrots that you could buy in the store. All right, so I got to share this one with you guys. So check this out. Look at this. You're like, John, what's that, man? A large lemon? No, man. This is a large orange. You're like, John, that orange? It's not orange, man. You got a color deficiency. You can't see colors, right, man? Well, no, I'm seeing all right. What you guys are seeing is basically heirloom orange, and heirloom oranges were actually yellow before they were orange. So figure that one out. And this is a cool heirloom orange that's yellow on the outside. I'll be sure to get the variety of it later on when I sit down with Dr. Bob and ask him some questions. You know, I always want to encourage you guys to grow some of the heirloom varieties. You know, they have different traits than commonly sold and commonly grown varieties. I mean, if you go to the store, most commonly you'll find maybe like navel oranges and Valencia oranges, You might also be able to find blood oranges and maybe some Kara oranges sometimes. But there's so many different other kinds that are not even grown or known about in the US. This is actually an Asian variety of orange, and it has some characteristics such as maybe being more cold tolerant than your standard oranges. So in case there is one of those 50-year freezes, right, his citrus trees are still going to be standing when others may not be. So this is a very important consideration to take when planting fruit trees, because a fruit tree is, in my opinion, a lifetime investment. It's not like vegetables. You know, you plant vegetables, you grow them for a season, they come out, you replant, right? But when you plant a fruit tree, you're planting it literally for your life and future generations in some cases, like that of the fig. So I want you guys to plan accordingly when selecting your fruit trees and get the right ones the first time. So a really important aspect of this garden and adding fertility back into the soil is composting. If you guys are a gardener or farmer and are not already composting, that's the first thing you guys should have been doing a long time ago. You guys should be composting all your yard waste and food scraps, provided you have space on your site to do it. Now, the amazing thing is there's just not one way to do composting. You know, one of my favorite phrases is compost happens, and Dr. Bob here is doing composting in several different methods, you know, and you don't have to just stick to one method. You know, you could try all of them, and of course this depends on where specifically you live. And because they get a good rainfall here, they have good water. They can have this metal grate here, which basically uses 4 sides. They put all the yard waste in, and then over time it will compost down. And the compost that you're generating using your, you know, clippings and yard waste is basically nutrients that have the plants and trees have pulled up that now you're putting back in to break down and then feed the ground once again. This, in my opinion, is the best way to add fertility to your soil, is by composting, you know, rather than bringing in, you know, chemical fertilizers or things from off-site. Of course, you know, I wish I had enough space to produce all the compost I need. You know, when I have acreage, I will do that, but at present time, I generate a lot of my own compost as well as I bring some in, because I believe compost really is that important to gardening. Now, besides this method of composting, let's go ahead and take a look at another few other methods of composting that he's doing here. I know you guys are thinking, John, I thought you're supposed to be looking at compost, man. All I see is like a pathway that basically has shredded leaves and some wood chips on it and whatnot. And yes, that's what we're looking at. And this is yet another way of composting, right? Anytime there is organic matter, whether that's trees, leaves, you know, plant clippings, whatever, come in contact with the ground, it will compost. Of course, there are ways to compost quicker and there are ways to compost slower. Any way you can return organic matter into your ground is a good thing. And basically he's basically putting down leaves and wood chips and all kinds of stuff on the ground to create a nice pathway so his shoes don't get muddy when it rains. But also it's breaking down and feeding nutrients, you know, to the roots and to all the microorganisms down below. This is truly the way to regenerate and, you know, bring fertility back into your soil. So besides this way, let me go ahead and show you guys another way that's very simple to return organic matter to your trees. So as you guys can see, we have a fruit tree here in the middle, and we just have a lot of debris or yard waste piled up around the base of the tree. And this is yet another way you can compost, right? You don't need to have a bin, you don't need to do anything except lay the organic matter on your ground, lay it next to the tree, and it will break down. Now, it may break down and take quite a while to break down, but it will break down provided you have the right you know, moisture level. Once again, returning nutrients back into the soil. Now, depending on where you live and your personal preferences, you may want to do this technique or not. You know, this is in his backyard. Nobody's really going to see piles of the shrubs underneath this tree. I think it kind of looks a little bit neat, and neat as in cool, not as in neat. And I'd probably be cool with doing this if I wanted to give up the space. You know, I prefer to like use the space around my tree to bring in finished compost and plant edibles underneath it instead of, you know, in my opinion, wasting the space to, you know, compost beneath the trees. Of course, there is, for the most part, no right or wrongs in gardening. The right way is the way that works for you. So I always want to encourage you guys to remain flexible and open. And that's why I make these videos, to show you guys how different people, including myself, do gardening, so you guys can figure out which way you want to do it. Because the way for you might not be the way for me. So his favorite composters are these guys. They're enclosed composters. I've never seen such a device before, and since I was here a year ago, I haven't seen these ever again. So I don't think they make these guys anymore. Bob's been definitely gardening for a long time, and he has all these cool things that you just can't get anymore. But this is another composter that he's using, an enclosed composter. And this can be definitely valuable when you're composting certain things. So Thanksgiving was recently, and they put some meat in there to compost down. And then it looks like on the bottom here, I don't know if you guys could see that, but a creature, some animal, smelled the meat probably in there, was digging and trying to get in there. But the bottom actually is kind of like, the jail cells, if like you're in jail, you can't get out of the jail. They have basically bars, or kind of like this grate that goes down into the ground, so even if creatures dig in, they can't get in there to get the compost that's happening on the inside, that's going to once again refeed your plants. Another thing I really appreciate about the garden here is that everything is fairly meticulously labeled, whether that's a fruit tree with a hanging tag on many of them, or the vegetable garden that has basically stakes with a little top of the yogurt container with basically a printout and stapled on here of what's planted in this bed, so that they know what's planted and they know the specific varieties. This is something that I definitely could use some improvement on. I just plant stuff and I don't care. As long as I could eat it, as long as it's edible, I'm gonna eat it. I don't really care, because I don't save my seeds too much. And if I do save seeds, I'm like, oh, these are some kind of peppers I grew, I liked them, I'll grow them again, but I don't know the variety. And some people are more concerned about the variety, especially if you're trading and saving seeds with others. But if you're just using all your own seeds for your use and you don't care what it is, as long as it tastes good, you're gonna eat it. I'm cool without labeling stuff. But yeah, so they make use and reuse of the yogurt containers to label their plants. Let me go ahead and show you guys another way they're reusing these guys to label their plants, which is actually quite cool. So another way they're using those yogurt containers, as you guys saw, they were using the top of that to basically staple on a piece of paper to with the names of the crops growing. They're also using the sides of the yogurt containers, the same yogurt container here, that's the back, and here's the front. And they basically use the inside of the yogurt container to take like an indelible marker and mark on there. This one happens to say mini yellow bell pepper, and that's what's growing right here. Looks like it's doing pretty well. And I want to encourage you guys to make use of some of the plastics that you buy. If you buy yogurt, cut the container up to make little plant tags you could hang with wire. In addition, they got some of them down here stuck in the ground. Pretty much this just says can't read the writing on that, but you guys could see they just make little tags out of plastic that normally would have gotten thrown away or recycled. So yeah, it's always better to reuse than recycle, and they're reusing, so I definitely approve. All right, so what we're looking at now is basically their sugar snap pea trellis that is going on. Down below they have all the peas planted that will trellis up basically. And how they've done this, they basically use inexpensive T-posts that can be nested together. They've used some screws to tie them together to make a really long stake. That thing looks like it's probably like going 12 feet up in the air. Then what they're using is wire mesh fencing that looks to be about 5 feet plus 5 feet, so it's about 10 feet tall all the way up. And let me tell you, that's my kind of trellis. This way the plants will grow up them, and then they could also start to grow down them after they get too tall, and they'll be able to easily harvest and access all the plants and its fruits. One of the challenges that I have normally is that my trellis is usually not long enough, and then the plants end up crowding itself and not getting enough sun. So in this way, it's very smart. They're going to have enough trellis for the plant to grow wherever it wants. What we're looking at now is just another one of their raised beds, and I want to show this to you guys because I know some of you guys may have cats, some of you guys may have neighborhood cats, and unfortunately cats like to use raised beds, especially ones that aren't well watered and wet, like a litter box, because to them it looks like a big litter box, especially if it's kind of dry. Now to avoid this, they've taken some of the, same material they use for the trellis that I just showed you guys, and they just basically put it over the top, just so that cats will not walk on it, go on it, dig in here, and do their business in here. I do have another video of using something similar to this previously, and that's actually a good technique to keep cats and other animals from digging and clawing in your garden. Alright, so what we're looking at now is this sweet potato vine, and this is just not your standard sweet potato vine. This sweet potato vine is actually grown not for the potatoes underneath, but they're actually grown for the leaves. This is a special variety of the sweet potato vine that's grown for its edible leaves, because it really doesn't make edible tuber down below. And so yeah, this one has delicate and delicious leaves. Not bad. But once again, they are sweet potato greens. But in this climate, they pretty much grow year round and will come back as long as you don't get a super hard frost. One of these days I'm going to get to grow these guys, because I think the more diversity in the garden, the better. Alright, so here's the last thing I want to share with you guys in Bob and his wife's garden today before we sit down and interview him. And it's this guy right here. He didn't have this out last time. So what he has in here is actually a pepper plant, not the standard pepper, but the black pepper, Makes like the peppercorns. And what this is a cold sensitive plant. And they did get into the freezing temperatures. So he wanted to put some protection on there, and he's had this for a number of years. It's actually called the All Season Aqua Dome. It says another quality product from Winged Weeder. And so what this is, basically this is like a little mini greenhouse for your plants that's insulated, Instead of putting plastic up on your hoop house, plastic sheeting, I recommend like a double pane, plastic made for greenhouses, which is going to provide better insulation than just the plastic sheeting. That's why most houses these days have minimum dual pane windows, and in some cases even triple pane windows. And that's what this is for your plants. This is like a dual pane greenhouse for individual plants. And besides just having some airspace in there, it's called Aqua Dome because actually between these two spaces here, you fill it up with water. So now you basically have a wall of water all around your plant. Now, water is a great insulator, and people know that, oh yeah, okay, the sun will hit the water in the daytime, it'll warm up, and then at night it releases the heat. So that's a common thing. But Dr. Bob told me that, when the water freezes, right, it's the water's also going to release calories or energy, which is going to help keep the plant warm. Now, if it does get cold, you're going to want to put something over the top of this dome because the heat will escape. So you're just going to take like a piece of wood, put it over the top, and this is going to have to get significantly colder in this climate, for the plant inside there to reach the freezing point, because now the heat is going to be trapped inside, whether it's hot out or whether it's actually freezing, because the as the water freezes, it's going to release energy to keep the plant warm. So this is super ingenious. I'm going to have to try to get a hold of these Aqua Domes and do some testing in my garden with them to see how they work and see if I can extend my season. Now, this is good to extend your season later, but also start your season earlier. And tomato plants and pepper plants, they don't like it when it gets below 60 degrees, and I know some of you guys always want to try to plant your plants out as early as possible, which I actually recommend, but not at the expense of, the coldness, right? If your plants get too cold in their young baby stages, they may have stunted growth, and then they will not fully develop and produce to their genetic potential when they are an adult. So I think a device like this can help you get planted earlier and also maintain the warmer temperature for your plants so that they can be healthier and produce more for you guys earlier. I guess the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and sit down with Dr. Bob and ask him some questions, that came up from the original video that I produced here, as well as some other things like how he deals with insects effectively, as well as some of the cool, unique varieties of citrus and pomegranates that you might want to plant here if you live in the Houston area. So now we're with Bob, and we're going to ask him some questions. Like the first question, I know may be important for you guys is, Bob, why'd you start this whole garden here and growing all the food on your property? I mean, and you've been doing this for probably even before I was born.
Well, a long time. We basically got interested in trying to grow enough good quality food. We became convinced that, both Nancy and I got convinced that a really good vegetable fruit diet was the core to living a long, healthy, happy life, or at least longer and happier than we would do otherwise. Some of us might live very badly and live 100 years, and others might live well and live 50 years, but you'd probably only get 40 if you were, So whatever it is, I just assumed it was as high quality as possible, and that was what we aimed at the beginning. We had experiences in California with very high quality year-round orchards and very high quality year-round vegetable gardens. And so when we moved here, that was our initial goal, was let's have a good vegetable garden and a good fruit garden. This place we got was the biggest piece of land we could afford with a reasonable commute. And that's essentially what we aimed at the beginning. And it changed over time.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to encourage you guys too. I've also found out that a fruit and vegetable based diet, I don't care if you eat all fruits and vegetables or, just a lot, you definitely want to be including them because those are some of the foods, the best foods on the planet that have the different vitamins and minerals and more importantly phytochemicals and phytonutrients that are, in my opinion, anti-aging and, pro-health based on some of the research I've seen. So Bob, another question I want to ask you is, talk about the insects, and you say you don't spray anything on plants to control insects, and I know some of you guys out there might have squash vine borers or aphids or whiteflies, and you're thinking, man, how can this guy not spray? So all my viewers, they want to know your secrets right now, man.
Okay, well, the first thing is that I spent 3 summers doing pesticide research in a chem lab when I was in college many decades ago now. But when I learned to respect those things, to feel that I used to wear a lot of protection when I was around those things, and it's very hot and humid here, and that protection is not something anybody wears when they do this around here. They don't do what people in the lab would have thought you would be doing. It says right there on the label, use a respirator, use a rubber suit, use rubber gloves. People do not do that. So that was the first thing, is that after I got interested in ecology in school, and Nancy is with me on this, even before me actually, we tried to figure out how you could minimize the use of pesticides. That was the first step. When we moved to Houston, 50 inches of rain is average. The highest rainfall since we've been here was around 77 inches for the year. Very rare for a week to go by without some rain. And I tried using both chemical fertilizers and pesticides, synthetic pesticides. And you would spray something and it would rain and it was gone. And then you say, well, do I have to go back? I did this yesterday, should I go back and spray some more? And it's not cheap. And it's very hot, and if you put those suits on, you can't stand it. So you go do this in shorts and boom. And so that's one part of it. Then the fertilizers, there are some chemical fertilizers that stay in the soil. They're designed not to dissolve, but they're very expensive. Organics are actually cheaper than those things. So I basically said, well, okay, and not just me, there was several other people in this area that were saying there has to be a different way. And so what the organic people have been saying since the 1940s is, how is it that a forest can go for 1 million years without anybody spraying it, without anybody fertilizing it, seems to be doing pretty good. why do we need it? And the answer is the science has figured it out by now. There's plenty of places like Cornell and Cal Davis, and some of the food web, soil food web people that have basically now know why forests grow the way they do and prairies the way they do, and they know how to do it in agriculture. So basically the science has now caught up with us. So my first question about pests is always, if you have a pest, why doesn't the pest have a pest? That is the question. Why doesn't the pest have a pest? What's wrong with your habitat so that the pests of the pests aren't welcome? Make them welcome. And we have a lot of bugs here. So if you don't have bugs controlling your bugs, you've got problems. And that really does work. That's the short answer to the question. You asked about aphids and squash, and there are some problems that are harder to deal with than others. The aphid problem, I don't think is a hard problem here on the Gulf Coast. There are plenty of aphids, but aphid is it has very poor defenses. It is not able to survive against predator insects. And almost many different things like to eat them. Spiders eat them, wasps eat them. So as long as they don't have protection from fire ants, aphids, generally will not find. If I see aphids on something at a problem level here 1 year in 5, I'd be shocked. To be honest, and I used to have them in the very early days, back when I used pesticides. Vine borer is a different matter. Most of the squashes are susceptible to them, pumpkins too, and there's no chemical or any other means that works well in a small garden on these things. Agriculturally, if you grow an acre of zucchini here, you'll have no real problems. They don't appear in large mass plantings, or if they do, it's insignificant. It may be that whatever goes after squash vine borer needs a lot of it, of that habitat in order to do well. I don't know, but if you plant 3 zucchini plants out here, they'll all be dead, and if you're lucky, you got 3 zucchinis out of it. But any relative of the butternut squash, with the Moschata species, they're all very resistant, and some of them do much better on the Gulf Coast than others. And I grow something called Gulf Coast pumpkin that is related to Seminole. What's the Baker Creek heirloom seeds, rare seeds, they sell a variety of those things, not the one I grow, but lots of ones that are similar. And those things are very resistant to borers. If you plant them in late March. That's what it has to be, late March here. If you plant them in June, you'll probably have trouble.
Yeah, so I mean, to deal with insects, he's doing it the way nature would have done it thousands of years ago in the forest. You know, how did plants live without getting aphid infestations? Well, number one, they had good nutrients in the soil, and plus they had also, you know, so the plants were healthier, so they may be more resistant to bugs and diseases and whatnot, number one. Number two, there's plenty of predators out there, right? And with the predators, nature has its own checks and balances, unlike the government, which I think needs some better checks and balances. That's another topic. And then the other way is, you know, he's growing certain crops. So for the squash borer, he's not growing crops that the squash borer is going to eat. He's getting ones that are resistant. And there are many kinds of crops, you know, like tomatoes that are VFN and all these disease resistances built into them. And so that's why I also encourage you guys to experiment with growing different varieties of crops. Baker Seed Company is an excellent example. They have so many different varieties, and if one kind doesn't work, hey, buy a bunch of different kinds and try them all, and maybe one plant you'll find is resistant to the bug you're having, you know, and that's how we've evolved over nature. That's why some people have blonde hair and some people have, you know, brown hair, and, you know, if it's too hot or not hot enough, right? So we want to use nature to our advantage.
And I would say there's another interesting fact, is that if you build up the right kind of soil food web, you have pests of soil pests. Mm-hmm. So like verticillium and fusarium, the VFN in tomatoes, those are fairly weak fungus that can get eaten by fungus-eating nematodes in your soil if you build a good soil food web, which involves adding quality organic matter the way a forest or prairie would, and not plowing. And in a backyard context, you do not have to dig up the soil. I do not till this soil ever.
I don't recommend tilling either.
And now if I've got 2 people working 10 acres, that's a different problem. What are you going to do? But in a garden context, and so I don't see this stuff, and I pay no attention to BFN here. I used to pay a lot of attention because I got it all the time back in the chemical days. But I don't see, you look at tomatoes out here, that's what they always look like. There's always a few leaves here and there. But I would, for disease control, that is the first step. Why don't you need a good soil food web?
Absolutely. If you're not, we're not going to get really into that concept or talk about that in this video, but be sure to check my other videos. I have over 1,000 videos now, and a lot of them have to do with building good soil. I'm really into that because the health of soil is the health of the plants. Much like, you know, we are what we eat. If you eat McDonald's and junk foods, you're probably going to be junk. And if you eat plenty of fresh fruits and vegetables, you're going to be a lot healthier and able to fend off diseases and other things, in my opinion. All right, so Bob, I know you've been growing here for countless number of years in the Houston area, so you know the specific, you know, varieties of squashes like we talked about to grow and other varieties of crops that do well. So you want to maybe name off some good varieties of the tomatoes, because tomatoes are always really popular and might be hard to grow them down here sometimes if you get the wrong kinds. And then also maybe some fruit trees. So I talked a lot about citrus in the video earlier, and named some of those cool heirloom varieties of citruses that you've shared with me, and maybe even that pomegranate that you think is the winner for this area.
Well, if I start with the fruits, I mean, there are huge numbers of kinds of fruits, and many of them very delicious. The ones that are highly adapted here, that don't depend on warm winters or something, but just average winters and so on, we have 3 or 4 basically Japanese origin citrus. There's one called Bloomsweet, which the Japanese name is Kinkoji, and it's hardy to about 14 degrees. It's an Asian grapefruit. It's not as bitter as the common grapefruits are, which are not that bad in my opinion. And the Bloomsweet is a very delicious, a lot of people think it's the best grapefruit they ever tasted, although there are 3 or 4 I would add in there. But it's very hardy, and it's ripe around December 1st before any threat of really serious cold hits, which we don't usually get, but we do sometimes. And there's an orange called an Ujukitsu, which is a yellow-skinned orange, and I recently read an article that said that up until about, I don't know, 1500 or so, all oranges on the planet were yellow. That the word orange is and the word orange for oranges is quite old. I mean, it's Spanish and Portuguese and stuff, naranja, I think, but they were all yellow, and the original Japanese oranges are all yellow, and citrus is an Asian fruit. And of course the satsumas, which are sold even in our supermarkets, ripen in the fall. They're also hardy into the teens. And then the pomelo, I have a Hirado pomelo, which is probably the hardiest of all the pomelos. So in subtropical areas where you might get temperatures in the teens, you might want to grow citrus that won't get damaged until you get into the teens somewhere.
What was that, the kumquat that I tasted earlier? That one, I like that one a lot.
Changshu, Changshou. It's a mandarin quat, a tangerine crossed with a kumquat, but it's an ancient one. It's a Chinese kumquat hybrid, basically, but not a deliberate one, an accidental one. And it's larger and juicier than kumquats typically are, but the skin is just as edible. That's a very nice one. We've been testing a lot of pomegranates, and if you're familiar with the way pomegranates have been spreading around the United States, a huge trove of outstanding South Central Asian pomegranates showed up in California about 1990 or so at the United States Department of Agriculture pomegranate repository.
Right.
And they started growing these things. Well, they virus tested them, then they started growing them, then they started tasting them. And one that has won a lot of contests and tasting contests is one called Desertnyi, Desertnyi. And that one, we've been growing it here now, and based on very few years of work, it does very well here and is an outstanding pomegranate. It's easily the best one I've ever eaten, and I've eaten dozens of varieties. There's nothing even close to it, in my opinion. And other people that have tasted a lot of pomegranates, their first reaction is, well, I'm tearing up all my pomegranates and going to plant that one. But, we've only been growing it a few years, but I think it's a winner. There are a lot of absolutely delicious fruit. There's a sweet muscadine grape called Darlene. It's a bronze plum-sized grape, 23% sugar.
Wow.
Just lovely grape. And the muscadines are very hardy, no disease problems. We have a guava called the Barbie pink guava. It's just delicious. And Moro blood orange is another one that's just lovely. You could
go on and on about fruits.
And you
make my mouth water.
I didn't talk about vegetables, so and the vegetables with tomatoes, just about any tomato will grow here and produce. The only ones that we struggle with a lot are ones that take more than about 75 days to fruit from transplant. We just don't have long enough winters and falls where the temperatures are the right temperatures for flowers to fruit. Because tomatoes fruit they only pollinate when the temperatures at night are between 55 and 70, and in the daytime generally between 60 and 85. And so in the springtime our temperatures start going over 85 in the daytime about the second week in May on average, and they don't drop below that until I would say about 12th of October, maybe the late September, something like that. Depends on the year. But then we go below 55, 1st of December, something like that. So, you know, if that's the temperatures, you've got to get flowers on your plant during that time. And so basically things that take forever to start flowering will not work. I really like a pepper that is an open pollinated sweet pepper called Totally Sweet.
Totally Sweet.
Totally Sweet. It's from Seed Savers Exchange. That one produces well all summer here, and it's a ram's horn type pepper, sweet, very tasty. And we've been doing well with a hatch type green chili that we've been growing here. It works really good for vegetable chili, and of course the really chilies that are used for seasoning are enormous numbers that do well here. But there are I mean, there are a lot of crops. We have green glaze collards out there. I like green glaze a lot. There are really any broccoli works, and there's some there are quick broccolis. There are long-lasting broccolis. Anyway, they're hard to. I like suyo long cucumbers.
Those work the best here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the Japanese ones.
Yeah, and we grow zipper cream peas, southern peas. Zippers are the best of the southern peas, the black-eyed pea relatives, and zippers just they are just lovely, and they're easy to. You have to, of course, remove the pods, and they're very easy to do. But there are very few vegetables, annual vegetables, that don't grow here. And so I like Kyoja beets. Those are the ones with the red and white rings. They grow well here, and the leaves are nutritious and grow easily. And just about any lettuce grows here, so just a matter of what you like to eat.
Awesome, Bob. So yeah, I mean, I know Bob is just literally a wealth of information. I could sit here with him for hours and talk, but I want to let you guys know that, you know, Bob has wrote a book. So Bob, how can somebody buy your book if they live in the Houston or surrounding area? I definitely recommend this book. I mean, it's all his knowledge compressed into a book, so I don't have to sit here and interview him for the next 5 days.
Yeah, the book is 12th edition, first edition of 1986, and I and a writing partner are actually working on another edition. But you can on my website, which is yearroundgardening.me. M is in my, E is in elephant. Year-round gardening, there's 2 R's in that. Anyway, at that website, there's a place where you find my book. And it includes all places that stock it routinely, and which are quite a few in the metro area. And then secondly, there is one online source. There's a local bookstore here that will mail it to you if you want it. And people in all over the country have actually found that book to be of some use, but obviously the closer you are to the Texas Gulf Coast, the more useful it's going to be.
Awesome. So do you also give classes and all this stuff, and how can somebody learn about your classes and all this?
Yeah, all the classes pretty much that I teach are through urbanharvest.org. And classes I just taught a class a few weeks ago, and I'm teaching, I'm actually doing a citrus tasting tomorrow at the farmer's market, which is also at that website. But I'm teaching 3 extended pruning classes in late January, early February on Saturdays, and I'm teaching I teach in permaculture, and we have a class here at the house. It'll be the Sunday the 25th. So I teach a bunch of classes that way, and sometimes teach through the OBA organization, which is for professionals, which is Green Professionals, and that's obaonline.org, ohbaonline.org. And so we have a lot of things coming up mainly we get people from out of the state typically to talk about things, and well-known people at that.
Awesome. So I guess the next thing I wanted to comment on is I know you're involved with this fruit tree sale that happens every January for I don't even know how long, the last 10 plus years now. And this 15 years now, and it's probably the largest single fruit tree sale anywhere on one day, anywhere in the whole country that I've heard about. And if you live in Houston or even the surrounding area, I mean, this is definitely worth the drive to come out. Can you tell my viewers about this fruit tree sale and how they'll find some of the cool fruit trees that you discussed actually in this video?
Yeah, the Urban Harvest website has a link to the fruit tree sale information. This year it's the 17th of January, but generally happens around the 3rd Saturday in January every year, whenever that is. Sometimes it's the 4th, sometimes it's rarely been the 2nd. And typically at a football stadium where we can get some huge area. Basically, we need a lot of area. And we sell a very large number of plants. We sold $170,000 worth of fruit trees in 3 hours or so last year. So, I mean, it's a lot of fruit trees, and it's every kind that grows here. The best varieties we can get a hold of for the sale, and we don't sell anything that we think won't work. And some years you'll see, a whole bunch of mangoes, and other years you'll never see a mango. It just depends on the suppliers. But I mean, these are trees. They're big. They're in pots. And we do it rain or shine. I always tell people if the weather's crummy, the selection will be better. Come in your, overcoat with the rain gear and come get some good fruit trees. And you have to get there really early if you're going after something that is hard to get. We teach 2 classes at Urban Harvest that repeat each other every year about what is going to be for sale. So you can take a class, and it's cheap. I think it's $5 for the class. So because we want you to come to the sale and we want you to know something about what you're looking for. But people will go there to buy a fig and end up with 2 pecans and a grape also.
Well, I definitely want to encourage you guys to save all your Christmas money and show up in January. Buy a bunch of fruit trees. I mean, even if you have a property now and you don't have the time to dedicate to put in a vegetable garden, to tend a vegetable garden, provided you take one of the classes, you buy a fruit tree, plant it properly. These fruit trees are going to do excellent in this area here, and you're literally guaranteed production so that you can start growing food out of your own garden, out of your own property, instead of buying stuff from the grocery store. Bob, do you have any other last comments you'd like to share with my viewers out there today? Any last messages that you want that people to be heard? A message that's so important to you.
Well, I mean, I would say this, that what you said about fruits is certainly absolutely accurate. fruits are they're I hate to make a pun, but low-hanging fruit. Most of these fruit trees, not all of them, but many of them practically take care of themselves. Some of them are hard work, like pears require a lot of pruning. But something like an orange or grapefruit, you can practically leave the thing alone once you have got it through the first summer. These are infants when you plant them, and they'll dry out or get flooded and they're dead. But if you pay the right attention, and I teach a care of fruit tree class every year, I already taught it this year, but and my book has a lot of information on that. But if you do it right, you will have a excellent experience. You may have to wait 5 years for it, but once you've got the thing producing, it's quite dramatic, quite dramatic. Known people get hundreds and hundreds of fruit off of trees. I knew somebody got 1,700 oranges off of one tree.
Wow.
900 lemons, 800 tangerines. I mean, that's people who pay attention and care for it. Not me. I have to settle for 300 lemons.
That's like one a day. Do you eat that many?
No, I don't. And, it isn't even my favorite sour citrus. So, but I mean, you get persimmons. I mean, there are so many things that just pomegranates. They grow themselves. You don't need to do anything except keep them alive for the first summer and make sure they get sun. Those two things.
I mean, yeah, in my opinion, nobody should plant any landscape ornamental trees that serve no purpose, but plant some fruit trees because we all need to eat. So I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. I really had fun. Thanks for having me over again, Bob, and I look forward to
see you.
yeah, visiting again when I'm next in town and share more of Bob's expertise with you. Be sure to check his website, get his book if you live in the area. #1 resource I would recommend. By the looks and taste of his fruits here, he's doing a great job, and he definitely knows what he's doing, and I got a few things to learn from this guy. Yeah, make sure you get out to the website to learn about the classes that he gives, and also make sure you mark it on your calendar right now if you live in the area, anywhere in the area. You want to come out to that fruit tree sale, get some fruit trees, and start planting some of your own fruit trees so that you can start growing some of your food out of your garden instead of buying the crap out of the grocery store. Anyways, once again, this is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. We'll see you next time, and until then, remember, keep on growing. All right, this is John Kohler with GrowingYourGreens.com. Today we have another exciting episode for you. My last day here in Maui. I'm sad to be actually flying out of here tonight, but I'm really happy actually because I'll be seeing my girlfriend tomorrow. But anyways, aside from that, why I'm here today in the standard residential neighborhood